Good morning. We are live on YouTube, but we're going to bring in our Facebook groups. We've got Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons and Scott Kennedy Sports. Both of those are on Facebook. Check them out if you haven't already. And then we're going to get to talk about the topic of the day, a little bit of Lamar Jackson, some Atlanta Falcons. We'll talk some Christmas, some game coming up. It's interesting coming up with the Ravens that this would be the topic of the day. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. You can find us after the fact. If you don't want to watch the whole thing right now, you can find us after the fact on falconspodcast.com. Check it out. You can see where that gives you the links to watch it on iTunes, on Spotify, iHeart, all of the different places, Google Pods, Amazon. I think we're on all of those. So just check it out, falconspodcast.com. And good morning. And today, what I want to get into, and it will be just me today, so it will be me and you. So we'll be very active in the chat this morning, and very active drinking the coffee this morning. So here's a ceremonial first sip. Benjamin Allbright is a NFL Insider. He covers the Denver Broncos out in Colorado, fairly well plugged in, and he kind of said something that Nick and I have been talking about for the last several months, which is the quarterback situation with the Atlanta Falcons. And is Desmond Ridder the guy? Would they go for a draft? Or might they even try and put together a package to go after someone like 25-year-old Lamar Jackson? They're getting the draft capital. They'll have the cap space in order to pull something off. Let me put that tweet up here for you, and I'll read it for those of you that are listening on the pod after the fact. But the question was, any chance the Ravens trade Lamar? And Benjamin Allbright says, originally I would have said no, but the longer it drags out, I think the more possibility opens up. It would have to be a team willing to give him the contract he's looking for. Okay, so a team with a lot of money. Falcons are going to have a lot of money. A team that has an offense that fits. Yeah, nice running offense, play action, all that type of stuff. Atlanta Falcons fits. And as he says, Atlanta suddenly becomes interesting. So we've talked about that a lot. If you're all in on Arthur Smith, Lamar Jackson might be the absolute perfect fit that we're talking about. But as you're going through the rebuild, what's it going to cost to bring Lamar Jackson to Atlanta? What would it cost to keep him, and would it be worth it? So let's say good morning to some folks in the chat real quick while this just starts to open up. Jamal comes in. He says, good morning, everybody. He says, rise up. Well, good morning, Jamal. And Michael Ranquillo says, good morning, Scott, on the Falcons podcast. Good morning, Michael. Appreciate you being here early on Christmas week morning here. And Kevin Fitzpatrick, first in on Facebook. Thank you, Kevin. And then Michael Ranquillo shares the news that was out. He says, Pittsburgh Steelers running back Franco Harris, former Penn State, where my dad went. I think they were actually at Penn State together at the same time. The age would make sense. Passed away this morning at age 72. And that's a shame. Rest in peace, Franco. He was a hell of a player, part of those, wonderful Pittsburgh Steelers teams. Down in Laura with the Immaculate Reception. I was actually talking about him last week, saying, in today's game, the Immaculate Reception never could have happened because one, the safety that broke on the ball that made the original hit would have been called for a flag, personal foul, 15 yards. And then two, replay would have overturned the call because at the time, it wasn't that the ball hit the ground. It didn't. The Immaculate Reception was two offensive players were not allowed to sequentially, whatever the word is, two people in a row, two offensive players in a row were not allowed to touch the ball. And the ball bounced off the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver into the hands of Franco Harris. And replay would have overturned that. Instead, there we go. Dylan comes in. He says, good morning, Scott. Dylan Snap comes in. Appreciate you being here on YouTube. And Christopher Edmond comes in. He said it's not going to happen, no matter how good it sounds, talking about Lamar Jackson to the Atlanta Falcons. Well, maybe. I would put it in the slim, but you're closer now with just needing the quarterback away than you were when you were trying to make a trade for Deshaun Watson, okay? So when we're talking about what would it cost to bring Lamar Jackson, not even just to Atlanta, but to get Lamar Jackson, I think we have a pretty good idea when we start talking about a 25-year-old Pro Bowl quarterback and what the template would be. Deshaun Watson went the same way. He hadn't even played for a year, and the Falcons were all in on him. If you guys remember, it was coming down to the Saints and the Falcons until Cleveland came in with a crazy offer. And Lamar says, or Deshaun says, that's where I want to go. And basically, he had the ability to okay that trade and the contract. What did it cost Cleveland to get Deshaun Watson, 25-year-old who hadn't even played a year and was going to be suspended for a full year? 3 first-round picks, a third and a fourth, with $230 million guaranteed contract. That's a lot to give up. If you've got your quarterback, a Pro Bowl quarterback for the next decade, it's probably worth it. That's still a lot to give up. You can stretch that out, and as the cap increases, the $50 million cap hit that Deshaun's going to have for the last 4 years of his contract, it's not that big a deal. It's a lot, but it's not crippling. As long as your quarterback is playing at a top 2 or 3 level, then it's probably worth it. By the end of that contract, the cap will be somewhere around $250 million, which that increase from 200 to 250 will basically pay for that contract. There it is. The rest of the 200 million for everybody else. We can start asking the questions. Would the Falcons be competitive in an offer like that? And I ask you the question, everybody here on the Falcons podcast. If the Falcons were willing to put together a package last year to go after Deshaun Watson, why wouldn't they try and put together a package this year to go after Lamar Jackson? Well, one reason is Desmond Ridder, okay? Maybe they feel good enough about Desmond Ridder that they don't go quarterback, and that's the big question. We start talking about what will the Atlanta Falcons do with a top 10 pick. I think that's where it'll end up. I think it'll end up somewhere, in the 8 to 12 range. I think they beat the Cardinals, finished 6-11. You're in the 8 to 12 range. So a top 10 pick in this draft. Do they go quarterback? Would they go quarterback? That's going to be up to Desmond Ridder in large extent over the course of the next 3 games. Now, last week, did you see enough from Desmond Ridder to say, okay, we're good. We're good at quarterback. We can go get an edge. We can go get another wide receiver. God, Lord, another pass catcher. We can go get another corner opposite A.J. Terrell. We can get a big interior defensive lineman to give Grady some help. We can do all those things. Or are you thinking, quarterback's still pretty much an option? So if you're going to use a 7 on someone like Will Levis, wouldn't you rather throw in a 2024 first also, and then maybe another package of slower picks, and then Desmond Ridder to get Lamar Jackson? Maybe. That starts to make a little bit of sense if you ask me. Now you get rid of that cheat code of having a cost-controlled rookie quarterback for $1 million for the next 3 years. But what good is cheap if he can't play? So the next 3 games, I think, are so important. And this is one of the reasons why I think most of us were so adamant that we would have liked to have seen Desmond Ridder sooner. So you've got a good answer to that question. Can he be the guy? Will he be the guy? Is he the guy? Rather than just a 4-game sample size. Now, to be fair, I've said all along, they may already know. They may already have a good feeling of where Desmond Ridder is and where he will be based on what they've seen in practice one way or another. No, this guy's not going to cut it. We know we're going to have to go get another quarterback. They may know that. I don't think so, though, because I think his tools are good enough and the small sample size we've seen that you want to see more. You can watch some guys and you can say, yep, in one play. I used to call those guys when I was scouting high school kids, one play offers. Watch one play. Yeah, just offer him a scholarship. Just offer him now. And you can see the opposite way. I can watch, a throw. I can be at the Senior Bowl and just say, okay, that guy's, and this is the Senior Bowl. And I can pick the 2 or 3 guys that aren't going to get drafted. You've got a pretty good idea. So maybe they already do know. I think he has enough tools and ability that you don't really know with him until you get him some time. It would have been nice to have seen Desmond Ridder play, say, after the Panthers game and get a start against that bad Bears defense, to play against the Steelers. And then last week would have been his 3rd game instead of first game on the road against New Orleans. And then you're going to Baltimore to play the Ravens. man, he doesn't get a break until he gets to play the Cardinals. So we will see. A lot of that will be up to Desmond Ridder. But if you're willing to put a package together to go get Deshaun Watson while you still have a huge salary cap hit hanging over your head with Matt Ryan, do I think this team would be willing to go out and get Lamar Jackson and put together a competitive package together in order to make that happen? Yes, I do. Now, the one thing we didn't talk about is Lamar Jackson's contract. He's playing on his fifth-year option this year, so that means the Ravens have the ability to tag him, put a franchise tag on him twice. Players do not like to play on the franchise tag. If they're good enough to be tagged, a franchise tag means you play on a one-year guaranteed contract and you get the average of the 5 highest players at your position. That would be in the neighborhood of $40 million on a tag for Lamar. Okay, that's real good money. But as we know, these guys are one play away from losing everything, and they're handing out $150 million plus guaranteed contracts to Russell Wilson, $230 million guaranteed to Deshaun Watson. These guys don't want to play on the franchise tag, and they will threaten to sit out. Excuse me. Let me get a hit of this coffee real quick. Clear my throat. They don't want to play on the franchise tag. And if they don't come to a contract extension agreement, Baltimore will threaten the franchise tag and Lamar Jackson will threaten to sit out. We saw this happen with Devontae Adams last year. And if they tag him, that basically becomes a longer window, a longer extension to set up a trade. It'll probably be a tag and trade or a tag and negotiate. But a tag, I will be absolutely shocked if Lamar Jackson plays on a franchise tag next year. He will either be tagged and extended or tagged and traded and then extended. So those are the kind of things I expect to see happen. All right, let's say hello to some folks in the chat that have come in. Dave has made his way in. Dave, good morning. Appreciate you being here. And Dylan says, he comes back and says, I'd love to see Lamar in Atlanta, but we've got to address edge rushing position as well. I believe in consistency and growth of every other position. Yeah, the thought is, again, if you've got your quarterback, that all sounds good, which, again, Dylan and Falcons pod out here was why I was so adamant about taking Justin Fields when you had the chance at 4. Why do you try and get your franchise quarterback when he's available? And again, you trust your evaluations also. And if you didn't think he could play, so be it. I question that. Like I said, I would have taken him number 2 behind Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence for me, number 1. Justin Fields, number 2. But the reason, if you need a quarterback, and you were going to need a quarterback because Matt Ryan was 36 years old, it is expensive. It's expensive to go out in there. Now, I ask you the question, would you rather have Justin Fields or would you rather have Justin Fields and 3 first-round draft picks, or would you rather have Lamar Jackson and no first-round draft picks for the next 3 years? I know where that one is for me. And by the way, Justin Fields is at about 20% of the cost financially. I know the answer for that one. I'd rather be sitting there with Justin Fields coming out of his second year, playing a year behind Matt Ryan, starting this year, and then coming out with a host of first round, basically being in the same position the Bears are in. You're sitting there with the Bears, where they've actually got a little bit more money than the Falcons in the 2023 salary cap, and high draft picks. That's where the Falcons could have been when it comes to the quarterback position. Right now, the quarterbacks are still maybe at quarterback, maybe not. And if you're a maybe at quarterback, if you don't have the answer at quarterback, it doesn't really matter, Dylan, if you're hitting, the edge. I get it. Trust me. We can walk through all the positions of need that I think are most important as we do this too. But as Kevin comes in, he says, keep the picks. So I think if you believe in in the process and believe in the rebuild, I think most of us would kind of feel that way. It's like, okay, we've seen enough out of Ridder that we don't want to give up 5 picks and $250 million to get Lamar Jackson. Is this team a quarterback away, or at least he's young enough in this case, as opposed to Russell Wilson with the Denver Broncos? Russell Wilson the window is now. He's 33 years old. We've got 3 to 5. Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, those are 25-year-old kids who you want to have for the next 10 to 12 years. You've got time to hit free agency for that edge, for that offensive tackle, for that opposite corner, AJ Terrell. You've got some time to do that when you're talking about sewing up the quarterback position for the next decade. So it makes it a little more worth it. Dave's pretty adamant about this one. He says Lamar Jackson will be a mistake and organizational suicide. Now, I think what you mean by that is you're giving up too much to get him, and he's not worth what it would cost. We're not talking about Patrick Mahomes here, is the idea. Now, there's some that might think that Lamar Jackson in the right system could be arguably the best quarterback in the NFL. I'd listen. I was looking up his numbers. His quarterback rating is through his 5 seasons is 96 and change. That's better than Matt Ryan's career quarterback, who was a pocket passer. Eli Manning's in a little bit different of an era, but Eli's not that old. Eli Manning was an 84 and has 2 Super Bowl rings. An 84 quarterback rating right now would get you benched. For sure. So Lamar Jackson can absolutely throw the ball. Luke Wright coming in. Luke, good morning. He says, good morning, Scott. And the Falcons podcast. Good morning, Luke. Appreciate you being here. And Michelle comes in and says, maybe they can have Matt Ryan. I got a feeling Matt Ryan, I'd have to look it up. His cap number comes down next year. He restructured. That seems that Matt restructured Ryan should be his full name. But the Colts will be looking at quarterback too. The Colts all of a sudden become a little interesting in this scenario too, because right now they're picking one spot ahead of the Falcons, have a big need at quarterback. They're in a similar position the Falcons were in last year when they should have taken Justin Fields in the 2021 draft. Nothing against Kyle Pitts, but I sure would have liked to have had Justin Fields, the quarterback. And the reason why is because a pass catcher wasn't going to do you any good for these 2 years. And now you still have questions at quarterback now that these 2 years of Kyle Pitts' first 2 losing seasons were up. On the Justin Fields and the draft picks versus Lamar Jackson question, Dylan Snap says, I'd take Justin Fields all day. Yeah, I probably would too. I don't think I'd want to trade. I mean, think of it this way. Would you trade Justin Fields and 2 first-round draft picks to the Baltimore Ravens for Lamar Jackson right now? No, I wouldn't. Joe Cannon coming. It looks like the Facebook algorithm and the Facebook fingers are working their way out there and waking some people up. But he says, great morning, Scott. Running a little bit late, but you're here. Well, we're glad you're here. Thanks for being here, Joe. Kevin Mapp also here, the Southern Miss Golden Eagle. Toya coming in. Says, the only thing that makes me nervous about LJ is the number of games he misses each season due to injury. There's several things to worry about Toya, and that's one of them. You know, is he a good enough passer to ramp down the running and be more strategic in his running instead of that being a primary weapon of his? He can throw. I mean, don't get me wrong. He can absolutely beat you with his arm, but he's not, that's not his. He's the closest thing we've had to Mike Vick since Mike Vick, but his touchdowns, his all-pro second season, he was 36-6 on touchdowns to interceptions. Man, if I can get that every year, I'm talking three first-round picks. With his legs, yeah, you can have my 3 first-round picks. Next year in 2020, he was 26-9, still solid, played 15 games, and he only played 12 games last year, and his numbers dropped to 16 and 13 touchdowns and interceptions. And this year, at 25 years old, it's 17-7. When you're talking about a player who relies so much on his athletic gifts, the drop-off can be a little steeper. Who does that remind us a little bit of? How about Cam Newton? Cam Newton is a robo-back. He is a guy who we saw that if you're building him in the quarterback lab, I've got size, I've got speed, I've got arm strength, I've got it all. I'm checking all those boxes. And it was Cam Newton. And Cam Newton took so many hits and so much punishment that the drop-off for Cam was quicker than it really should have been. And it was a shame. And Lamar could be at that same way because he's not as big, nowhere near as big as Cam Newton. Cam Newton was tight end size, 6'6", 240. He could handle a little bit more of that abuse. and unfortunately the referees let him take it. I think it's like he didn't get some of the protection that other players did because he was so big and strong. And then we talk, the Cordarius Jackson comes in. He says Lamar Jackson, Arthur Smith, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. He says draft Bijan. The team would be amazing. Cordarius, the problem is you wouldn't be able to draft Bijan. You wouldn't have that first round pick in 2022. Any way to get to get Lamar Jackson is going to cost you your top 10 pick this year. It's going to cost you your whatever pick next year too. Maybe you're picking 15 or 16, and it's probably going to cost you your 2024 first round pick. Wait a minute, 25. Time's flying, man. I can't believe we're in 2023 already. We're talking about just in about 10 days. So it's going to cost you your 2023 first rounder. It's going to cost you your 2024 first rounder for sure. And then it will probably cost you your 2025 if you were going to. But again, it doesn't sound quite so bad if you say, well, we're going to use that pick on Will Levis. Okay? So because we need a quarterback. All right. Well, now I say, would I trade 2 first-round picks in Will Levis for Lamar Jackson? Yeah, that's starting to sound a little more interesting to me. So yeah, the part of it is, and Ryann comes in and he says, the Falcons team is not in position to trading away all its picks for one player or dumping all of our money for one player. And Ryann, you may have just gotten here, and I touched on this a little bit, where making a comparison to Deshaun Watson versus Russell Wilson. When you're making that investment in Deshaun Watson, you're making that investment for the next 10 years. So you've got a little bit of time to start your rebuild with your quarterback. It wouldn't be right away, obviously. And then you would have some free agency money. If you didn't have your first round picks, you'd have that money for free agency. So Chris Lindstrom's on his fifth year deal next year. His contract will be in the neighborhood of $14 million, 14, 15 right there on his 5th-year option as a first-round pick. You wouldn't have that hit your salary cap. You'd have that available for free agency. So there is a little bit of a trade-off there. So when you say you're not in position, they're not one player away to win now, I agree. You don't go and do this for a 32-year-old quarterback, 33-year-old quarterback. But if you're looking at what a player could be for the next decade for this team, this franchise, this city, Lamar Jackson would own this freaking city. Let's be serious here. This is still, as much as we love the Braves, this is still a big Falcons town now. It is. You just don't know it all the time until they start winning games. But then you start thinking about that investment. You're like, okay. And like I said, if you look at it and say we have to use our first round pick on a quarterback anyway, if that's the case, if I say 2 first rounders and Will Levis for Lamar Jackson, it starts making a little sense. And as far as the money goes, a franchise quarterback is going to take up about 20% of your salary cap unless he's on a rookie deal. So that's fairly normal. $50 million that's what you were willing to pay Deshaun Watson. That's somewhere where you're getting to do that. Where you're willing to go get him. So it is a thought for me. And Cordarius says, forget Bijan at running back, whatever running back. Lamar doesn't take like hits like Cam does or Fields does. His injuries have been from the pocket. Yeah, he's so have everybody's, man. I mean, I am less inclined to put so much into one quarterback these days, into one player these days, because everybody's getting hurt. Everybody is getting hurt. You better have a backup other than Josh Rosen back there who can go back and play. Thanks for pronouncing my name right too. I'm glad I got it. And if you're a longtime Falcons fan, you may remember Darius Conner, one of my favorite names at outside linebacker. I think he ended up playing with the Saints for a little bit too. But Darius Conner was one of my favorite names for a hard-hitting Falcon. Charlie Beagle says other teams are probably wary after seeing the Russell Wilson deal too. They should be. They should be. The draft capital is still good. But the other part of that is, though, Charlie, is other teams are also wary of spending a number 2 and a number 3 on Trey Lance and Zach Wilson. I can have all this money and guaranteed contracts going to these guys who haven't done anything. Or I could just go ahead and give up 2 picks and go get a an all-pro quarterback who's 25 years old, 25, and who would be the face of the franchise the second that he walks in the door. If the Atlanta Falcons and by the way, I'm not sure this is a live shot behind me. I think this is what it looked like against I'm trying to think of a team that nobody cares about. I can't say the Bears because it'd be filled with the Bears fans, or the Packers fans, Steelers fans. But it's the Detroit Lions are behind me. This is a live shot of the game. This is what the dome looks like, the lower bowl looks like right now during games. So, think of it from all of those perspectives, and it starts to make sense. And Ryan asked, if you get Lamar Jackson, how do you get players for defense and offense? Over time. Depending on what you're giving up. Like I said, you would have more free agency. You'd be tying money into your quarterback, but you end up doing that anyway. Quarterbacks are expensive unless they're on rookie deals. So if best case for this entire team, obviously, is Desmond Ridder is the guy. You've already got him. He's cheap. He's controlled. You don't have to pay him for 3 years. That would be best case. If you've got a franchise quarterback that you don't draft, it's expensive. And after their second contracts are expensive. So you get your quarterback, you're done on offense for the next 3 years, and you start pouring second round picks and free agency money into the defense. Because if you go and get defense, and if you don't have a quarterback, if Desmond Ridder, if that's as good as we saw, or as Marcus Mariota, ladies and gentlemen, this team isn't going anywhere anyway. Not with that quarterback play. So until you improve your quarterback play, the rest isn't all that important. I mean, it is, but you're not going anywhere anyway. Again, I will point you to the Denver Broncos and a top 5 defense and one of the 3 worst teams in football right now. So there's more than one way to do this, and having a 25-year-old franchise quarterback is a pretty good start. And then there's ways to work around free agents and draft picks. Shoot. I mean, the Falcons have been playing with, scraping the bottom of the barrel. They're at $92 million in available in what they have on the field right now. An active salary, active contracts that they're playing with right now. It's at $92 million. That's less than half of the full salary cap. Look at Bama X coming in. He says, good morning, Scott. He's coming in bright orange. Thank you so much for the support, my friend, and Merry Christmas to you. If you have any questions or anything, obviously hit them up. I love that you, coming in and supporting this channel for me. So thank you very much. Just a reminder, if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, stars and super chats are the most direct way to help support the show. So thank you very much, Bama X. Chris Walker comes in. And you need an offensive line that can pass protect as well as run block. More talent at wide receiver, more depth across the board, and probably some more things I'm forgetting. Yeah, this team isn't good. They have overachieved early, which kind of changed our expectations a little bit of where they could be. But I think I picked this team 2-15, maybe 3-14. And the reason why is we're seeing it now. When you're going out there and you're throwing Timmy Horn and Jaleel Johnson and some of these guys out there on the defensive line, and then Corliss Armstrong at corner. These are practice squad guys from other teams that you've picked up, or a $1.2 million veteran minimum that I've picked up off the Titans waiver wire or the Bears waiver wire, because I don't have any money. I got $92 million on the field as opposed to a possible maximum of 210. So you can pretty much ask any position and say where I would be interested. Toya says, do you think there is a QB in this draft class that could fit and would be available at number 10? We'll see. There's some shine coming off the quarterbacks right now, just a little bit. 6 months ago, CJ Stroud and Bryce Young were a lock for 1 and 2. You're starting to hear the name Anthony Richardson out of Florida creep up a little bit until I spent the weekend in Florida and have some friend. My father-in-law is a big bull gator, and he's just like, I don't get it, man. What are they talking about first round for this guy? I'm like, well, it's the tools. It's the project, which means he should have gone back now that he can probably make more money in college next year than on his rookie deal. He should have gone to Florida and played one more year. But Anthony Richardson could fit this offense like a round peg in a round hole. I'm always wary of drafting for scheme, though. because schemes change. If you're willing to give Arthur Smith the first 2 years because the team was a disaster, but they go and get another top 10 pick, go and spend $100 million in free agency this year, and you go out and throw out another 5 and 12, the scheme starts looking a little different because you might be looking for a different quarterback. I mean, a different head coach. So things could change there. Dylan comes in, he asks, while we're talking new quarterbacks, is Jake Matthews going to be around long enough to protect him? We're so lucky to have a cornerstone like him on the line. Well, it's luck, but it's also he was a top 10 draft pick. It was one of the few times that Thomas Dimitroff made an investment in the offensive line with a premium pick, and they hit. It's been good. Dylan, he's not going anywhere because I think he's going to get an extension to restructure that contract. The highest contract. Now, this is kind of crazy to me. So listen to this and just remember when you're thinking, why are the Falcons in these situations? This is why. The highest paid offensive lineman this year had a cap hit of about $21 million. And then he went on the IR. I think it was Garrett Bowles. He's on the IR. So next year, based on the restructuring of contracts, which basically frees up cap money for this year and increases cap money down the road, don't worry about that. We'll just restructure him again. He has a $33 million cap hit next year. The highest was 21 this year. He's got a 50% increase on the next highest guy from this year. That screams to me restructure, that he's going to get another restructure, which is just going to kick the can down the road where eventually he's going to have a giant dead cap number on his contract and he won't be playing very well anymore. We've seen it happen with, do I need to list the examples? I can. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Deion Jones. They say the cap is a myth. It is, as long as you're spending your money on young players who can play. When they start getting old and start going down and you're trying to replace them and you can't because he's got a $33 million dead cap hit, you can't do it. And that's just, actually, he's got a bigger dead cap hit than that. Let me look at what it is. But his salary cap hit is astronomical next year. And I can't spell, there's his name. His dead cap hit next year for 2023 is $30 million. So it's 31 and he's got a $34 million cap hit. That screams restructure for me. So I think you've got 3-4 years at least of Jake Matthews. And hopefully, because you're going to be paying him like a top 5 tackle, hopefully he's still playing at an average to above average level. Appreciate there, though. And Charlie says, Trey Lance, that seems like an eternity ago. I'd forgotten all about Trey Lance. Yeah, man, if you're going to give up 3 first-round draft picks, wouldn't you rather do it for Lamar Jackson than a guy from North Dakota State who started 1 year of college ball? Wow, that one was that was pretty crazy. And Dave comes in, he says, that Jackson's getting banged up. I mean, think of a running back. A 25-year-old running back is starting to get worn out. He says, yes, Jackson is 25, but those 2 recent injuries, he might as well be 28. And then let's go on here, and we'll come down the chat just a little bit. Dave says, I'm tired of gimmicks, aren't you? In regards to what? I wouldn't consider Lamar a gimmick on that one. So let me see on here. I'm going to just scroll down the chat a little bit, and Kevin's talking about, I forget about the 5 and 12. I said 5 and 11. Unfortunately, I'm looking correct. And then he says, 5 and 12. Yeah, the 17 game, adding 1 game shouldn't be that hard for us to figure out. But the automatic 8 and 8, 7 and 9, it's so ingrained in our brains. I mess it up all the time. And Kevin says the 49ers forgot about Trey Lance too. And Ryan comes, he says, wouldn't you rather have a defense, play calling, and weapons like the 49ers have rather than go all in on one player and hope he changes the franchise? Well, it's interesting you say that, and we just mentioned Trey Lance in the same breath because they gave up 3 first-round draft picks for a guy they're not even playing, Ryan. So, again, you could have all those things too. It's not an either-or type of proposition. You can have both. You can spend 3 first-round draft picks on a quarterback and still have all those things if you're willing, if you build a team right. It's just not going to be next year. And it's not going to be next year, period. There's not enough time. The rebuild starts next year. It does. There's going to be over $100 million in free agency money. There's going to be a top 10 pick. How do you want to spend that? Do you want to lock up your franchise quarterback right away and then start building down the line? Cincinnati Bengals style. How did they get good on defense? They drafted young playmakers. Hello, Kyle Pitts and Drake London. They spent a big pick on a quarterback, number 1 overall, Joe Burrow, and they spent a ton of money on free agent defenders. Okay. I think that would work. That'd be one way to do it. But the thing is you got to hit on those. If you miss, you're in big trouble. And Caitlin says Lamar would fit right in with team culture and everything. Like I said, he could come down here and own this city. Absolutely. Rich coming in saying, good morning, folks. Good morning, Rich. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you being here. But we're at 35 minutes, and I think we're getting pretty close to calling it a day. So if there's any questions here or anything that you wanted to hit on before we get out of here, but I think my final thoughts on this were, again, if Lamar's going to have to push for a trade if he wants out, because they have the ability to franchise tag him. He's not playing on a quarterback like that's not going to play on a franchise tag. If he does get tagged, it's either to tag and trade or extend the negotiation window where they tag and then sign him to a new contract. When you're dealing with $250 million in guaranteed contracts, he's not going to want to play on a $40 million contract. And I know how stupid this sounds to you and me. $40 million, $250, it's mind-boggling. But when you think of it, I'm not signing for a guarantee of 20% of what I can get. That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Would I be willing to give up 3 first-round draft picks for Lamar Jackson? Probably not. Probably not. Will the Falcons be willing to do something like that? I think they were pretty close to doing something like that with Deshaun Watson. So they will be in the conversation. Desmond Ridder can change that conversation over the course of the next 3 weeks. And that's what I think Falcons fans should be rooting for, is the guy you've got, you want him to go out and be the guy and play really well. If he does, and you still want Lamar Jackson, as Caitlin says, it may cost at least 2 first-round picks. Yeah, it could cost you 2 first-round picks and Desmond Ridder, and you send your quarterback in the other direction. So him playing good gives you a lot of options. That would be the single best outcome, and we will get a chance to find out this weekend as he gets his second start. Lamar won't be playing, I don't think. I haven't looked into the Ravens. I know it's been Huntley the past couple of weeks. So I watched him play against the Broncos, and Huntley wasn't bad. It's gonna be a tough game up there before they get to come home and play the Cardinals, who have already flown south for the winter or west for the winter or wherever. They're done. Stick a fork in the Cardinals. They don't want to be out there anymore. It's the worst team in football right now. If they win another game, I will be shocked. On that note, we're going to get out of here. Get ready for Christmas weekend. The Falcons play Saturday. Yep, Saturday football, Christmas Eve. God bless it. Against the Ravens. They're about 7-point underdogs right now, and then they'll come home and face the Cardinals. We get a pretty good idea. The other game to watch this weekend for Falcons fans, I think the other one to really pay attention to, is Denver Rams. If the Falcons lose to the Ravens, they pass the winner of that game in the draft order and would move up to 6th, assuming Indianapolis Colts lose to the Chargers. All those things are pretty likely to happen. So unless the Broncos and Rams tie, if the Falcons lose, they move up into number 6 and start getting a lot higher. So on that note, thanks everybody for being here. Bama X, thank you for the support, my friend. And everybody, thanks for coming on Facebook and YouTube. Give us a like and a share. Get more Falcons fans in here where we can start talking it's kind of a support group at times. You got to be tough to be an Atlanta sports fan. So appreciate everybody being here. I hope everybody has a safe and happy holidays, and we'll see you next time.